My son-in-law grabbed my daughter's wrist so hard her knuckles turned white. He leaned in close, voice low and cold, and snarled, "Say one more word and you'll regret it." Right there. At my dinner table. In my home. I'm Jack Thompson. And in that single second, something shifted inside me that would never shift back. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I sat perfectly still, kept my face completely calm, and watched Mike storm out the front door like he owned the place. But the moment that door closed, I slipped into the garage, reached behind an old toolbox on the third shelf, and pulled out a phone I hadn't touched in 10 years. I typed one text. 8 words. No name. Family emergency. Need protection tonight. Then I deleted everything, buried the phone back in the dark, and walked upstairs like I'd only gone to check the furnace. Mike had no idea what I'd just set in motion. Nobody did. And what happened in the next 72 hours? I've never told a single soul the full story. Until now. Let me take you back to that dinner table, because you need to understand what I saw in my daughter's eyes. Emily had been married to Mike for 3 years. On the surface, everything looked fine. Nice house, decent jobs, family dinners every Sunday. But over the past several months, I'd noticed things. The way she'd flinch when he raised his voice. The long sleeves she wore even in summer. The way she'd look down her plate whenever he spoke, like she was trying to disappear into the chair. Sarah, my wife, thought I was overthinking it. Every couple has rough patches, Jack, she'd say. But fathers notice things. We always do. That Sunday evening, Emily said something at the table. I don't even remember what it was, something small and harmless, and Mike's hand shot out and locked around her wrist like a vice. The color drained from her fingers. His face twisted into something I'd never seen before, and he hissed those words directly into her ear. Say one more word and you'll regret it. The room went dead silent. Then he let go, pushed back his chair, and walked out like nothing happened. Emily immediately started rubbing her wrist and laughing it off, saying he'd just had a long week at work, that everything was fine, that she was fine. But I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. Not embarrassment, not frustration. Pure fear. And something in me went ice cold and completely quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a man makes a decision he won't take back. Once the house settled and Sarah was in the kitchen, I made my move. I found that old burner phone and typed that message in total darkness, hands steady, heart hammering. Then I went back upstairs and sat beside my wife on the couch and watched television like it was any other night. 35 minutes later, there were 3 soft knocks at the back door. Not loud. Not urgent. 3 quiet, deliberate taps, the kind that told me exactly who was standing on the other side. I opened the door a crack. Victor Kane stood there, hood pulled up, face half hidden in shadow. We hadn't spoken in 10 years. Not since I walked away from that old chapter of my life for good. But the moment our eyes met, it was like no time had passed at all. He stepped inside without a word. We moved straight down to the basement and talked in whispers behind the water heater, far enough from the stairs that nothing could carry up through the floor. I told him everything. The wrist. The hidden bruises. The control. The fear living permanently behind my daughter's eyes. Victor listened without interrupting. And when I finished, his expression didn't change, but his eyes went somewhere cold and still, the way deep water goes still right before a storm. You want this done hidden and clean? He asked. Make him disappear from her life, I said, without anyone ever knowing I started it. We planned every single step right there in the dark. No phones after tonight. No cameras. No traces of any kind. Then I climbed the stairs, kissed my wife on the forehead, told her everything was fine, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling while my heart refused to slow down. The hiding had begun, and there was no going back. The next morning, Mike walked in through the front door wearing the biggest smile I'd ever seen on him. Coffee in hand, kiss on Emily's cheek, chatting about the game the night before. Acting like the man I'd seen at my dinner table 24 hours ago simply did not exist. But I caught it. The way his eyes moved when he thought no one was looking, scanning the room, drifting toward the windows, landing nowhere for too long. The smile was wide, but the eyes were working overtime. He felt something. He just didn't know what yet. What he didn't know was that Victor's people had slipped silently into his office building at 4 o'clock that morning. No forced entry. No alarms triggered. They moved like smoke. And on his desk, They left a single plain envelope. Inside, photographs, financial records, a paper trail of secret gambling debts and hidden accounts Mike had been running for years, things not even Emily knew about. And beneath all of it, one typed line: "Touch her again, and your world ends without a sound." No signature, no fingerprints, no witnesses. By midday, Emily quietly mentioned to me that Mike seemed off, checking his phone every few minutes, jumping at sounds, throwing glances over his shoulder like someone had been following him all morning. And then she said something that made everything worth it. "It's the first time in months I've been able to sit at a table without feeling like I need to shrink." I kept my face perfectly still and told her I was glad she felt comfortable. Nothing more. But inside, I knew the pressure was working. And it was only just beginning. That afternoon, Sarah pulled me into the laundry room, closed the door, and looked at me the way only a wife of 30 years can look at a man. "Jack," she said quietly, "something feels off. What are you hiding from me?" I held her close and spoke low and steady. "I'm handling it. Trust me. And keep this between us." She searched my face for a long moment, looking for the crack, the tell, anything. She didn't find it. But she didn't fully let go either. She just nodded slowly and walked back out. I stood alone in that laundry room for a moment and let the weight settle on my shoulders. Hiding things from my wife was the last thing I ever wanted to do. 30 years of complete honesty, and here I was, keeping the biggest secret of my life from the woman who knew me better than anyone on earth. But some things only work in the shadows. And the moment this came into the light, it would unravel completely. An hour later, a block number called my cell. I answered and said nothing. Mike's voice came through, quiet, unsteady, stripped of all that Sunday swagger. "You did something, old man. I can feel it." I stayed silent for 3 full seconds. Then I hung up. Victor had warned me this moment would come. It meant the pressure was landing exactly where it needed to. 2 of his guys were already parked 2 blocks away in an unmarked car, completely invisible to anyone walking past. And that night, just after dark, I watched through the gap in the living room curtains as Mike's truck rolled slowly down our street, headlights off, engine low, and then kept moving. I sat in the dark a long time after he was gone. Victor's message arrived and deleted itself within seconds. His rattled, "Stay hidden." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 days. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. That night, Emily came and found me alone in the kitchen. She didn't say anything at first. She just pulled back her sleeve. The bruise ran along her forearm in deep purple and yellow, old enough that she'd been covering it for days, maybe longer. She looked up at me with eyes that were tired of being afraid. "His gambling losses have been getting worse," she whispered. "And he takes it out on me." I kept my voice level and calm even though every instinct in my body was screaming. "Stay close to home tomorrow. Trust me. And don't say a word to anyone." She nodded. And in her eyes, for the first time, I saw something new alongside the fear. Hope. Fragile and small, but there. I didn't sleep that night. Around midnight, 3 soft knocks came at the back door again. Victor moved through the dark like he'd never aged a day. We went back down to the basement. Behind the water heater. Voices barely above breathing. He laid out the final move. His contact would quietly apply pressure to Mike's biggest creditor. Heavy enough, targeted enough, that Mike would have nowhere left to turn and no reason left to stay. He'd run. And he'd do it thinking it was entirely his own idea. "After this," Victor said, "you go back to your normal life, Jack. And I disappear completely." We shook hands in the dark the way we used to a long time ago, and then he was gone. I went back upstairs, climbed into bed beside Sarah, closed my eyes. One more night. Just one more. The next evening, headlights swept across the entire front of the house. Mike's truck pulled into the driveway fast and hard, and 2 men I didn't recognize climbed out with him. Big, rough-edged. The kind of men you don't want showing up at your door after dark. Moved to the window without turning on a single light, baseball bat in hand, staying just behind the curtain. They pounded on the front door. They shouted my name. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I barely breathed. Then, from somewhere down the block, came the sound of sirens. Victor's last card, played at exactly the right moment. The 2 men froze, looked at each other, scrambled back into the truck. Mike stood at the edge of the driveway for one moment, pointed back at the house, and yelled into the dark, "This ain't over." And then they were gone. I turned to find Emily and Sarah standing in the hallway, both pale, both shaking. "It's almost finished," I told them. "Stay inside. Keep trusting me." They did. And what happened before midnight that same night, none of us saw coming. Just before the clock turned 12, there was a soft knock at the back door. I moved through the dark house carefully, expecting Victor. Instead, when I opened the door, a woman slipped inside quickly, head low, eyes nervous, checking over both shoulders before the door even closed behind her. Rachel, Mike's half-sister. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been awake for 2 days carrying something too heavy to set down. "He called me last night," she said, barely above a whisper. "He broke down completely. Told me everything. The debts, the threats, how it felt like invisible hands were dismantling his entire world piece by piece." She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. "He's checking into a rehabilitation facility tomorrow morning. Out of state. And he's already signed the divorce papers." I stood very still. She pressed the envelope into my hands and left as quietly as she'd arrived that I brought it inside. Emily came downstairs in the quiet of midnight, and I watched her read it at the kitchen table, tears moving silently down her face. It was an apology, real and raw, full of shame and fear, and a release. A goodbye. Sarah wrapped both arms around her daughter and held on. I stepped out to the garage alone. One final message was waiting on the burner phone, already counting down to deletion. "Debt cleared. He's gone for good. Stay safe, brother." I read it twice. Then I set the phone on the concrete floor and brought my heel down on it until there was nothing left worth finding. Every trace. Gone. Forever. Mike left town the following week and never came back. No more trucks in the driveway. No more blocked calls. No more fear living in my daughter's eyes like a permanent resident. 6 months later, we sat around that same dinner table, the one where it all started, and the sound filling the room was laughter. Real laughter. Emily smiling the way she used to smile before all of this, talking about her new apartment and her new plans and a future that was entirely her own. At some point during the evening, Sarah reached under the table and found my hand. She leaned close and whispered, "Whatever you hid from me that week, thank you, Jack." I squeezed her hand and smiled and said nothing. Some things stay in the shadows forever. Not out of shame, but because the people you love are safe and smiling and free, and that is the only thing that ever mattered. One text to an old number. One quiet knock at a back door. And a father who decided that protecting his family was worth whatever it cost him in the dark. I did what any real dad would do when pushed past the line. And I would do it all again without hesitation.